Hello. Okay, this is like the 100th time I've recorded this intro because turns out making the start of things is the most difficult part, which is foreshadowing for later. So, this is a video to do a little post-mortem on a game prototype I did that I spent a month working on a few months ago, and sort of just talk about how the process went in making the prototype. Was it successful in terms of gameplay and realizing the goals of the prototype? And just give a little bit of a technical, just a little bit of a deep dive of how such a project is structured and made. To give a bit of context, earlier this year, at the very start, I wrapped up some full time work and I also wrapped up some freelance work. And I wanted to spend just an undecided amount of time to work on my side projects and give them a bit of love, and explore just other ideas of making art and stuff. And one of those ideas was this game. Uh, and so I decided, oh, okay, I want to give one full month on realizing what this could potentially be. So the game idea is based on, well, it's a gardening game. It's a gardening game based on a train platform station, on a train station platform, and this idea originally came about because for a while I had always wanted to do a gardening game that was sort of inspired by what you would see on an allotment. So in the UK, I don't know if this is in other countries, but in the UK, especially like in cities, and in London, where I'm based, you can buy, you can pay yearly for a little bit of land, and it's usually among a certain community, and so you have all sorts of people from the area who you can see there, and yeah, you have a little bit of land that you can do whatever you want with, and sort of make a nice garden. You can grow vegetables, plants, flowers, whatever. Um, and so I really like this idea of this community aspect um, of gardening, uh, and I felt that like a lot of other gardening games, their main sort of loop is like an economy. So you would grow stuff to sell, and then with that money you can buy new tools and buy new, seeds and things. But that's not really how this kind of stuff works at an allotment, right? So it's really you're you're developing this garden, you're maintaining this garden and caring for this place for the sake of the garden itself, and for your own satisfaction, right? And your own sense of progress each year. Like you can each year after all the crops have died and stuff, you can basically plan out something bigger and better, or smaller, or very different. Um, and a lot of the way you kind of upgrade on things is by speaking to people or not. I mean, you could just Google a bunch of stuff, but you have people who come by and say, "Oh yeah, you can do something like this," or I have this kind of thing. Do you want this? And you can exchange, or you should use this tool. And so I really wanted that kind of that interaction in a game. The reason why I picked a train station platform is because in London there is actually already a bunch of these kind of small community gardens on train station platforms, and so there's someone like abandoned platforms or platforms that are no longer used. There's even some more in like West London, Northwest London, where they are platforms that are still in use, but they have these little community gardens. And I really like this aspect of just like the train station platform brings in all sorts of people, right? You have like doctors and lawyers and kids and tourists and just all sorts of people coming through. Uh, but they don't have, they stay for a bit, but they don't need to stay there forever. And so you can have people, all sorts of people come in and out, um, and so you have this kind of hectic sort of cycle on a bigger level, and then maybe a slower kind of pace of life within the garden. And I really like that kind of that interaction between those two sort of rhythms. And yeah, so I wanted the main way for you to upgrade, or like get better at gardening, and making the garden a better place is by talking with people. And what you do with the garden affects the people who pass through the train station, and the people who pass through the train station also affect the garden. And so the main way to progress would be with talking with people and sort of exploring, human relationships. One of the big constraints that I set on myself, which maybe in hindsight is probably a bit of a very tough constraint for a first proper fully realized game prototype, is that I didn't want any money. And so it's very easy. Well, maybe it's not easy, but it's definitely a lot easier than no money, where you have a number that you can easily make go up, do stuff to make that number go up, and then use that big number to upgrade things and stuff. So I don't have any money, and so, well, I mean, I don't have any money. I don't have much money in real life, but there's no money in the game, and so yeah. But yeah, I'll show you what the prototype, how it plays, and then we can kind of explore, what I've learned from it and what went right, what didn't go right so much, and yeah. So let's have a look at the prototype now. So yeah, you're gonna have to imagine nice music here. The music's by a Japanese composer. I think it was in the 70s, maybe it was 80s. Kind of sort of slow synthy. It's very nice, very calm. So at the start of the game, we're introduced to a character called Lily, and she's just saying, "Ah, thanks for coming to help out with the garden." So yeah, this basically the whole prototype is a tutorial, and I'll get into more about that later. So she's told us, "Oh, here's some trash grabbers," and telling us how to use it. And so this is sort of to teach us in a very basic way how to interact with the garden. So it's going to get pretty busy now because apparently it's 8 a.m. So bye, Lily. She's going to monitor the ticket things, and she's going to leave us to it. Leave us to cleaning up the trash. So here we go. So there's a phone. So let's go and go to the phone. Who's this? I think it's Lily. So your inventory can get full, but it can only get full with trash. So yeah, you can empty the trash here in the bin. But this, yeah, the prototype essentially, the scope is doing the tutorial, kind of a slice of the game as if it was real. And I should also mention that the graphics, it's all like placeholder developer graphics. So this isn't actually the art style of the game. So she's telling me that Rubbish Man is gonna come and pick up the trash from. He's gonna empty the trash can for us. I think that's a bit rude. So let's say about that. Oh, turns out he's insistent on being called Rubbish Man. Now, there's some little weird glitches here. I upgraded to Godot 4.5, so I don't know if that did anything, but that wasn't there originally in 4.4. So a big part of what I wanted in the game is that your what you say to people is remembered, and like small things actually matter a lot. And so that conversation we just had there actually can change what happens later a little bit. So our inventory is full, so let's empty that. Oh, looks like there's a little kid on the station. Maybe we should go speak to him. He thinks we're a garbage person. I think we are a garbage person. So that little kid, he's heavily inspired by us picking up garbage. And yeah, inventory full. Oh, someone else here. This is gonna look really bad. This is like placeholder animations, but this is a placeholder animation for him picking up trash. But it looks like something else. This is a universal. This is all ages game. So please ignore. Let's speak to him and ask what he's doing. Ah, yes. So this is the rubbish man, and he's given us some shears to get cutting. So can we set the camera and we can pick up the shears and get cutting. So yeah, the start of this tutorial essentially cleaned up the space. Someone else here, she looks a bit worried, so let's speak to her. So I think in the actual game you'd probably see her like chucking some trash on the patch of land. I'm gonna say it's fine. Don't worry about it. So let's help her. I can take that, I guess. Put it in the bin. You know what? Put it in the bin yourself. So she's going to put her rubbish in the bin. And she will also do the disturbing animation that Rubbish Man did. Maybe we shouldn't watch this. Oh boy. So not everyone wants to speak to you on the train station. But what you do with the garden ideally would affect that. And so maybe certain people don't want to speak to you unless you have certain kind of plants, unless the garden is a certain way, or you've spoken to certain other people. And so I wanted something where you have sort of this little ecosystem, in a small ecosystem that affects a large ecosystem, and they can both affect each other, which in big ways. And yeah, people just go about their day. So this whole thing, a lot of it was just spent on simulating people going about their day. And so people check their phones, people wait at the platform for the trains. There's a whole like day and night cycle. So I did like the typical developer thing of building a lot of these systems, which are very fun to build. It's different. There's a difficult balance, I think, between sort of the systems you build and how much it can contribute to a game, because I don't know, sometimes you need the systems to make it feel good. I wanted to show you some people getting on the train here. So there's some people getting off, some people getting in. It looks like Lily's back with Rubbish Man, so let's go and let's clear up everything first, I think, and let's speak to them. What do they want? Uh, I'm a little bit tired. That was a lot of trash, so. The rubbish man is surprised that we cut all the grass. He's not easily impressed. Lily's easily impressed. So he was going through the rubbish. Rubbish man apparently always goes through the rubbish. Let's ask why. And as he was going through the rubbish, he found some seeds. And so it turns out when we told that really worried person earlier with the sort of red hair, ginger hair, she had thrown some seeds away. And so if we actually kept speaking to her and kept taking her trash, she would have told us about the seeds and she would have gave them to us instead of throwing in the rubbish. And yeah, so things could have changed quite a bit. So this part of the game, this part of the prototype, I basically sort of was running out of time, and so I threw together this whole thing. I was like, oh crap, we don't have. We mainly just picked up rubbish for this whole thing, so I better add some gardening, and so I quickly just throw together rubbish man giving you a spade, and then giving you the seeds that you found earlier, and then you planting them. And so he's going to... Good camera placement. He's going to get some watering can. Get a watering can. So let's fill this up. Can we? There we go. And now we can water it. And then the music plays, and that's the end of the prototype. And then I think we should go into a little retrospective. But yeah, that's essentially a month of work. I wouldn't say full-time work, because I learn a lot about how I work without a proper routine, and it's kind of here and there. So it could be like a lot at night, a lot in the morning, and then not nothing in the day, and meeting people. So it's really hard to say if it was like full-time work, but yeah, that's like a month of focus on that. And so that's the prototype. So yeah, clear to me when I started finishing the prototype, and then also when it was confirmed when I playtested it with people. I basically essentially made a rubbish picking up simulator, and I made a tutorial, and that's it pretty much. And it didn't have much gardening, and it's really clear in hindsight. And it was coming very clear, as these systems and stuff was coming together, and as the tutorials were coming together, I was like, oh, I literally don't have any time to get even to the gardening, and I was so focused on like teaching new players on how to just interact with the prototype. I forgot the whole point of the prototype, and it's really difficult because I've done many prototypes before, and you focus on like core aspects of the gameplay, but it's really hard to get a sense of like what makes something fun, because sometimes just have there's a few things that I know that add a lot to a prototype, that really make it feel much better, and that's adding sound and animation and just some very basic graphics, and that can really make something feel so much more alive, and it definitely shows, because when you show people this, they actually like, oh, they get it looks nice. And when you're trying to sort of explain developer art, or you're trying to, when you don't have sounds, it can just feel very dry. And so a big part of games is this, everything else sort of adds to that whole game feel and that game loop. And so when I went into this prototype, I was like, okay, I'm going to make a slice as if it was a real game. And I guess I started with the tutorial. I guess, I don't know, I guess maybe if I was to do it again, I would have gone for a slice in the very middle. But yeah, very, very difficult. Also, another thing I found when showing people this is that pretty much the majority of people, when the game starts and you first see this person, the majority of people think that's you, that's your character, and so they get a bit confused. A bad thing about the prototype is that I take control away from the player, and I'm kind of just like, do this, and then we all wait until you do that, and then I take away control. It seems so obvious in hindsight. I don't know, like I feel like at least before this, I thought, oh yeah, I really know sort of like UX and in the line of work I've done with like products and stuff. I understand about like not taking away control, trying to like pace things and stuff. And then for some reason in the tutorial, I just took away control. I was speaking to someone in Brighton and I forgot their name, so this is not my idea, but he was basically saying, I say Brighton because it was like a game developer conference. He was basically saying that really you should sort of start with like, you kind of just start with allowing the player to move around, and then they have to interact with Lily to start the whole thing, and then have the player push it forward, and so it actually kind of paces it. They pace it themselves, and throughout the whole prototype, I was really worried about like there's just not enough content, and so I was filling things in and like taking control and doing this and doing that, and for some people, not everyone, but like for one of my friends, they actually found it overwhelming. Like they were like trying to, the text is going fast, and then because they're not English isn't their first language, and so they're trying to read, and then they're missing some important information, and then the character's waiting for you to do something, and then you kind of do it, and you get to do it, and this person that I was sharing it with, they were actually enjoying picking up the trash, like they're kind of cleaning up, and then the telephone rings, it's like, and then and then they just don't, and they don't play games often, I guess, but it was just so interesting to see a different perspective of like, oh, they're actually having an insane and hectic time. This game is like very intense, and that was the complete opposite sort of thing that I wanted. I wanted kind of a peaceful game, kind of a game that can breathe and allow to be slow and interesting, just looking at things. And so I was so focused on making sure the player wasn't bored. Yeah, I don't know. Well, I do know, but yeah, it's hard to explain. Yeah, and then there's also just things like general things of like this whole sort of cutscene like aspect. There's just things missing. People's names. People just don't read. I don't even read when I play games. Like I even like skip things a little bit more forward, and I made the game where I made people read more. I think ideally, if the game was made, it would be voice acted. Because I don't really like reading and I prefer voice acting. But then at the same time, I'm like, my strength is actually not even making narratives. Like so I'm gonna pick busy here. My strength is not making narratives, and I chose, this is gonna be a narrative sort of based game, and I guess I had the idea of like, if this became a proper prototype, then maybe I could have someone on board to do the narrative. But it's right now it focuses so much on like what the characters say and do, and I think it's kind of probably wrong to expect that there will be that in the future. I need to work out like how can I make this as much of this on my own as possible, and then bring in people as like an addition instead of like I guess because it's really hard. I think it's really hard to get people on an idea early like this, and I understand that. So I should really be doing most of it myself, or at least the core of it myself. That feels really good. Just want to show like earlier on the phone, I said to Lily, "Oh, I'm busy, so let's see what Rubbish Man says." And he's like, "Oh, I thought one was busy," so he's getting a bit sassy. So he's giving us the shears. And yeah, also just inventory. I did everything in this prototype that I don't like about games, and it's funny. I kind of forgot everything, sort of inventory management. Running out of space. People would fill it up, and it'd be like, you can't do that. And so it's just kind of, I don't know. It's not very fun, I guess. Yeah. So that's kind of what I learned. And so in a way, yeah, the prototype was successful. I learned that going about it this way, probably not the right idea. Good things I learned though. The actual concept of the game, sort of garden on the platform, seems to like capture people's sort of imagination. When I went to the game developer conference in Brighton earlier this year, speaking to a few people, like their eyes light up a little bit, like, oh wow, and then they actually start thinking of ideas and sort of adding to it. This is actually why initially I went with this idea, because I would tell people like, oh, have this idea for a gardening game, and people would start suggesting their own ideas. And even though like maybe I've already thought of that or they don't really fit the game, I haven't really ever had a game idea before that kind of sparked people's imagination like that. Another thing is that people who don't even play games, but they had heard from other people, friends of friends and stuff, they would ask, "Oh, how are you? I heard you was working on some kind of game prototype, like a garden on something to do with trains and gardens." And like people who don't even play games, and they've just randomly, and we're not even like proper friends or anything, just friends of friends and stuff. They've remembered the concept, and so I feel like the concept of a garden on a train station is quite captivating as a narrative or as a kind of theme, I guess. So I really love that idea, but the downside is, and to summarize the thing that I have learned is, it's the second to second game loop that I haven't nailed down. So in a way, like, let's say, okay, fine, we can get someone who can do narrative later, or art, blah blah blah, or whatever. Those are kind of big game loops, maybe like between the 5 and 10 minutes, and then like over the hours is improving your garden. But the second to second game loop, it's just not fun. It's just clicking on things and nothing happening. And the insane thing is, so I'm gonna actually like open up a debug menu now. The insane thing is, I actually have systems built in that can actually simulate plants growth. There's plants. There's and I didn't use any of it in the prototype. So that's the funny thing. So actually, I think this segues nicely into showing some of the inner workings of it. So let's have a look at that. All right. Okay. So this is the technical deep dive section of the video, and so we've waited for the right moment. It's night. It's dark, as all technical deep dives should be. They get very dark, and we've got a Coke Zero, the deepest, diviest technical Coke there is. And I'm also gonna move the video out of the way because it's tiring. So this is a blank garden here, and let's also mute the sound a little bit. Yeah, so as I was saying, there is actually gardening. What I can do is get a tiny shovel, some lavender seeds, and yeah, let's plant something. So let's plant some lavender. So we can put this here, fill up this watering can, and fast forward time. So we go to the next day, and you can see the next day it's already sprouted. And so let's keep watering it and fast forward to another new day, and it's grown more. And so there is actually a system in here that, based on how healthy the plant is and how much water is available and how much time passes, plants will grow. Now, obviously, I have seen what lavender looks like, and I know it doesn't look like this. This is just like developer art. But it just goes to show that there is like an actual gardening system built into this that can simulate these plants. There's also there's bonkers stuff in this, because I'm even like simulating what phase the moon is in. And so there was a plant called a moonflower which I was experimenting with, where let's get one of these and plant it. Now, we might not actually be able to see it as fast, but the idea was it would only actually progress in growing on when the moon is a full moon. But yeah, so there's ideas of like different kinds of plants that respond to the environment. And yeah, didn't use any of this really in the prototype, or at least in the demo I got for people to play with. And yeah, if I was to do this kind of thing again, I guess it would be just focusing on this core loop and making sure that this is somehow fun. But it's really difficult to sort of work out how to focus on that when a big part of the game is also talking with people. So yeah, there's also, as we saw earlier, there's a whole like NPC scheduling system. And so all the background NPCs that you see have their own schedule. They're kind of just randomly placed like this. And the same scheduling system is used for these background NPCs, and it is also used for the characters that you interact with. So for example, if we fast forward to Rubbish Man, he arrives at the front of the station at 12, and then he's told to leave at 2. And every NPC has like a goal. So I did originally like experiment with using like goal-oriented systems. I spent like I wasted a day on that, trying to implement it. I implemented it, but then realized actually it's not the thing I want. And so they just use a bunch of state machines. So I think, yeah, every NPC has like a state machine, and then depending on what goal has been set, they can choose what state to go into. And so we've got here Rubbish Man doing something very suspicious, but he's actually just lingering. So his goal is to linger, but then the params of that goal is his action is to collect trash. So that is collecting trash, and we can see here we've got evidence that this isn't something really dodgy. So here's Sarah, who didn't want to speak to us. And so like if we actually click on her, let's click on her there. It will say if she's in a cutscene, and then everything pauses. Actually, no, not all the time. Sometimes certain cutscenes can pause time, but not all cutscenes. But yeah, she's been marked as. There is some flag somewhere to say, oh, this cutscene has been done, and so you can't do it again. Yeah, so this is the whole NPC scheduling system, and so we can jump forwards and backwards like this. We can see when people arrive. The people who want to get on the train wait for the people to leave, and then they enter the train afterwards. So they're all very, very polite. And that's done with these like spawn systems, which can queue spawns, but also queue despawns. So for example, here on this train door 1, it's not active, but if I was to make that active, then they actually go to that spawn point and deactivate themselves, despawn. And yeah, this is the state machine I was talking about. Every NPC has a state machine, and so we can see that here. And then this is a bunch of parameters to do with the story. So this is the interesting thing with this, is that all the cutscenes and all the story is done in GD script. So it's the same language as the game that the game is programmed in. So we have just one big giant file called story, which schedules all the NPCs at certain times and tell them, and it says where they should be spawning. If we look at, for example, the conversation with the kid, Mark, his name is Mark, and actually if we go to him here, where is he? Where's Mark? There he is. This whole conversation is actually all done in GDScript. And the reason I did this is because I have actually played with a bunch of Godot add-ons before, which do like narrative stuff. But I found like the most popular ones, or at least the most fully fleshed out ones, all use their own sort of simplified scripting language for dialogue. And when you actually get into writing dialogue and having these sort of custom actions where characters need to do stuff in the world, you ended up writing a lot of this kind of glue code for their scripting language, and then you kind of lose out a lot of the benefits of like a full-featured programming language, or at least as fully featured as GDScript. And also just scripts in general. Like if we're going to go with a scripting language to manage these conversations, we already lose like the ease of being able to manage like branching very nicely, because these other scripting languages, they all just use if statements and stuff. And I think the real benefit to an actual narrative add-on would be actually that you could graph out dialogues using nodes, and that would give you something that a scripting language can't really help you with. And so I was thinking, well, if we're going to use one of these things, might as well, I'm going to give it a try and write my own dialogue system in pure GDScript. And for the most part, it works pretty well. The only major downside is because it is all just in GDScript, you don't really have full control of when things are executed. So I rely a lot on awaits, but you can't actually abort awaits. And what else? You can't abort awaits, and you can't like skip backwards and forwards very easily without like sort of starting to build your own sort of scripting systems to manage that. But apart from that, and apart from the fact that you still have to deal with like branching in an ugly if statement way, it makes it really easy and fast just to add new features. So there's no like plugin system for this, because I'm just writing just GDScript, and so I already have direct access to the world, or as much of the systems I want to be able to access. You can access those through this. So yeah, if we look at, for example, one of these actions in this cutscene, we've got move camera to NPC, and if we look at that, we can see, yeah, I have like things that can find an NPC, find the player, and then just do a tween. Oh, that shouldn't actually be logging out there, I don't think. Yeah, and we just wait for that tween to finish. But there's also so there's a lot of functions which they sort of end up like primitives, and then you can build these higher level functions with those primitives. So it actually works quite nicely. For example, this wait for condition, it just keeps checking if a condition is true, and when it's true, it will complete the wait, the coroutine. And this wait for condition is used in a bunch of places. So we've got like wait for condition where you want to wait for the controls to be disabled because there's a fade out animation, and you don't want to like have to hook into the player and say, oh, when is this animation finished? So you just wait for a boolean to change. And yeah, this wait for condition is used in other functions, like for example, wait till player has an inventory item. So we can use these sort of more primitive functions and build up more complex ones. So we've got wait for any. So this is like when any of those functions are true. Yeah, so that's how the cutscenes work. Let's save that actually. and that's Mark here. So we can see, oh yeah, Mark, why are you picking up garbage, blah, 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 and then you give them a choice, which is this. And yeah, so that's cutscenes. I guess I should also say sort of a principle I had when doing this was trying to... So GDScript has generally a lack of like type safety, and one of the things I wanted to know, or what I want to know as soon as possible is when a cutscene or one of your scheduled events has been set up incorrectly. And so, for example, if we're choosing spawn points for a NPC, this spawn points function actually takes in these NPC spawn points. And so it's not just based on a string, because what you'll see in a lot of projects, and a lot of previous projects I've done, is you just put the string of what you want to, for example, in this case, spawn to. But the downside is you don't know when that doesn't exist until this piece of code executes. When you're using something a little bit more structured like this, as soon as this script executes, if it can't find this, it will become undefined and it's like the wrong type, and then we can fail early. Yeah, so if I do pick random spawn point, yeah. Well, I hope it fails early. I think it fails early. Maybe it doesn't. Actually, we should try that. Let's see. Let's restart that. You know what? I did a cheeky lie. I don't know if this fails early. Where's so it would fail when it gets to her here, which isn't ideal. But you could do stuff like, instead of doing or null, you could add asserts in here. So let's do assert a. Yeah. So you could add an assert in here. I'm not going to write that now because I can't really think about writing code when I'm speaking about code. But so you could fail early. We fail as early as possible. I say we, I mean me. What else have we got? So that's the story. How does the gardening work? So the gardening works based on a tile system. And I guess the more technical word is it's cellular automata. So it's a grid of cells, and then in each tick you do stuff to those cells based on what the previous cells were. And I'm just going to take a sip of Coke Zero. Oh yeah, that's good Coke Zero. So if we actually look at, let's move this over here. So we look at Game of Life. Conway's Game of Life is the classic example of cellular automata, or automaton. Sorry, automaton. And so it's a similar concept of these. You have these simple rules, or you can have complex rules, but you have simple rules that act on these tiles. And so if we look at, let's see, I think it was called simulation. And then inside simulation we have, actually it's not simulation, it's grid. Simulation grid? Yeah, good. Have this class called garden grid, but it's pretty generic in terms of like what it can handle. It can just be called like a cell grid. And if we take a look at this, so if we do garden.edit, we can look at see where we edit stuff on this grid. So yeah, the first example that we saw when we opened this was setting up the garden grid. Oh yeah, some asserts there. So let's do this. Yeah, so edits on the grid are wrapped in this edit function, and all this edit function does is say if the grid is being edited and if it's not being edited. And the reason why we do that is because when you edit a grid, you don't want to edit the existing cells that you're referring to, otherwise you get all these sort of weird behaviors. And so you actually want to have essentially two versions of the grid. You have the sort of this initial state, let's say this is all soil, and then, for example, when I edit it, I say the next version of the grid. So let's get a trowel. The next version of the grid is with this cell dug out, and then after the edit, it will swap those, and so the next version becomes the current version. And so you just keep swapping backwards and forwards between these two grids. It sounds more complicated than it is. If you read the Wikipedia page, they sort of, I think they do actually mention this. But yeah, this is sort of all these edits are wrapped in this edit function for convenience. And so yeah, and then you set cells. And yeah, because you're working with these two grids, you usually duplicate the cells before you edit them. So for example, this edit is scheduled to repeat every 10 seconds. And what we do is we get the current cell, we create a duplicate of that current cell, so that's the next cell, and then we do stuff based on a bunch of rules, so like what the cell type is, if there's bees. Yes, apparently there's bees in this prototype which don't make an appearance, but there's bees technically. And yeah, so we just kind of do that sort of thing, and it's actually quite easy to add these new rules. Yeah. Another big part of the game is the simulation, which is a huge mess because really all of the events should work through the same system, but I have actually all these scheduled trains, scheduled NPCs, scheduled events. Really, you just want one kind of event that can be scheduled, but that just sort of happened naturally based on just building and not really knowing what I wanted yet. But the schedule system's nice in that it doesn't. So it works on tick system, so it's separate from the frame rate and sort of any part of. Yeah, so it's separate from the rendering or the physics processes, and so actually when you like fast forward stuff, you can actually end up, because I think by default, I should probably fix this error here. Let's find where that was. It's yeah, I think I messed up something there, but probably that thing I edited earlier. So the tick system, sort of when you're running a game at a normal speed, it's like 1 tick per second. But if you're like fast forwarding the game, you're actually covering multiple ticks per second. So you want to ensure all those ticks get run and everything gets simulated within that amount of time. So when you fast forward to the next day, it will actually run as many scheduled events as it needs to, as if it was being played in real time. I don't fully remember how I made it work. There's some code here somewhere. Yes, this stuff here. This stuff, I'm not really sure. It came out of my brain somehow. And the only downside, so it does work, but the only issue is it doesn't do the ticks in order. So that's a problem. But luckily in the prototype, that's never really an issue. And yeah, you can just schedule a bunch of thingies. I'm gonna have a quick sip of the Coke. That's good. Good old hacking Coke. Let's see what else we can look at. Yeah, I've got a bunch of flags. So this is kind of a thing I use on pretty much all my projects where you can turn on certain things, like debug things, and they're saved locally. So got the NPC. Oh, just crashed it. Oh, there we go. Got some pathfinding in there. Let's have a look at the other flags. Spawn points, camera depth of field. Looks pretty cool. So that's like visualizing where the depth of field starts and begins. We got the grid renderer, which is a very versatile grid renderer and don't really do much with it. So if which it took me like 2 days to work on, because I had an original scrappy grid renderer thing, and I built a new one where so if we actually go to the garden level, I built a new one that can actually handle like all these kind of different rotations, and like if we pull it out there, you can actually start planting things. Oh, you can even like rotate it. You can actually even have this sort of animated and rotate around, and it still works. So let's put some trash on here, like that. And let's trow up this place. So the grid renderer like actually knows like when you click, and like yeah, it's really versatile, and it made me kind of think like, oh, maybe there could be a game where you do just have like this kind of futuristic gardens where you can put gardens on the wall and panels that move around. I don't know how that would make it more interesting gameplay wise, but yeah, I mean, a lot of farming and garden games are just on a flat plane, so maybe there could be something where you are gardening upside down. The grid render can handle that. So let's put the grid back. Let's turn off all this. Yeah, what else? We've got lots of different things here. Spawn lines. Spawn lines are very interesting. They're so I found that when I'm spawning the NPCs that actually matter, which push along the story, sometimes you might be at this point of the station, so you might be over here doing something, and the NPC will end up spawning here, and they spend most of their scheduled time. Let's have a look at the debugger. They might spend most of their scheduled time just traveling towards where they need to be, and so they might spend like 2 hours in game time, and once they get to where they are, they need to leave, and then you don't know if you might have not seen them. And so what spawn lines do, they're like spawn points, but they're lines, and so these NPCs actually can spawn just outside of where the camera view frustum is. So if here we go. Yeah, so for example, they would spawn about here and about here and here, and so wherever your view frustum is, they will choose sort of the nearest points. So it looks like they came from that spawn point. So it looks like they, for example, came from this entrance, but actually appear here. And actually, I think if we do the debug so if we do debug camera, we can actually see those spawn points on the spawn lines. So there's lots of little things like that just to keep things moving along and making sure NPCs are where they're supposed to be. What else have we got? There's a lot of the debug. So yeah, I also experimented with text-to-speech. So let's have a listen to that. They all have the same voice. Can I? Oh, I think she's in the way.
Why are you picking up garbage? Why are you putting garbage in your pockets? Are you a garbage person?
So I was experimenting on that. That's just using the system text-to-speech. But yeah. What else? Cutscenes. Got the player, the simulation. Yeah, I think that's pretty much all the little debug stuff I can show. Maybe I can get into the how the project is structured, and then let's call it. Right, I need to take a few sips of this delicious Coca-Cola Zero before we dive deep into the project structure. Now, the reason why I'll just do this is because I think it's really useful actually to see how complete, at least in this case, complete projects are structured and built, because there's a lot of ideas out there of like how you should do this and where you should put that. And when you're starting out, it can be quite daunting. And even actually now, as someone who's worked for over a decade, sometimes you just get hung up on where things should go. And I kind of want to just show that like there is sometimes a correct place of where things go, but it's not like a universally correct place. And I just want to show that real projects are quite organic, and there is a structure, but that structure can appear out of how you've built it, and like with these small refactors here and there. So it really depends on the project. But I will show just the general structure of how this is done, and how and how this was sort of born out of many prototypes over almost half a decade in Godot. So let's have a look at the beautiful project structure. Whew, I'm going to have to take another sip. Okay, so everything starts in the main scene. So we have this main scene, which is, and it has this main script, and that starts all of the, basically all the game. What it does, it loads a level, it sets the window title, it does a bunch of other stuff. Oh, it does all the debug menu stuff. That's just thrown in main. I mean, you kind of want that mostly everywhere, so it's fine. One thing you might be wondering about is what the hell is this weld thing? So this is sort of a thing I picked up about 1 or 2 years ago. And essentially it is just a singleton. So it's accessible anywhere in the game, and it does a lot of things that you always want to constantly do in games, from anywhere, that interact with the game world. And so, for example, I've got one of the most basic is loading a level. And when you load a level, it will pull it out. Oh, I don't know what I just did there. It will pull it out of the levels folder. Okay, so actually I should have a little look at the folder structure. So we've got add-ons, audio is top level, cutscenes is top level, entities. And so this is entities is basically anything that can be in the world, including UI. I've just always found it a lot easier just to have a giant directory of things that you can use, drag into a world and that are interactive. And so I just keep them all here in one sort of flat directory. And these globals, so the world, utils are global, so we have a bunch of utilities. SFX, it's just a little sort of library to play sound effects. The flags, and a debug logger, so it's just a custom logger, and the world. And then levels, which at the moment is just garden. And the reason why it's kind of structured like this is just kind of to make it easy to sort of access stuff when you're developing. Because when you have a lot of structure, sometimes, it can get quite easy to start building a structure that doesn't really make sense for your game. And so actually keeping it as flat as possible, I found, until it's somewhat painful, really helps. And I've kept things that you want to access quickly usually at the top. So for example, cutscenes are at the top, because I'm always going to cutscenes and I'm always just wanting to quickly edit a cutscene, or audio, for example. So I don't want to have to like dive down, is it in public assets thingy? But maybe for bigger games it would make sense for the structure to be a bit more nested. But for me, I keep things generally mostly as flat as possible, yeah. So actually, I was going to say I'm going to show you the structure of this project, but there isn't actually much structure. Uh, yeah, and yeah, and these are the singletons, and I'm not using uh, globals here for that. Uh, Maybe that's a mistake. The original reason I did that was so that I could actually still make levels and make tests without those things existing. And also, let's say I want to set up a test scenario with a different world setup. I can actually provide a custom one specifically for that level. So let's say in this movement test, I can actually put a world here, and it will use this singleton instead of the main one above. Yeah, so that's the reason I do that for the world. So yeah, that's the structure. We can have a look at the code a bit more. So we've still got audios, top level here, entities. Every entity is essentially has a script and and sometimes a scene named after it. So you know that's the entry point for an entry. And then yeah, if an entity has more specific things related to it, then it just has those inside of its folder. For example, garden tile. The only other time you want to deal with garden tiles is if you have different types of tiles, and so that just lives in here. So you have a grass garden tile, a lavender garden tile, etc., etc. Same for inventory. All the icons are just in inventory because yeah, NPC states, the models, player, all the states in there. And here's some of the UI stuff. So this, I'm still never really happy with like how I do UI in Godot. It always feels like I'm messing about for when trying to work out when things are ready and stuff. But yeah. Let's have a look at the player. Is there anything interesting in player? Just a lot of code. And you'll see there's a lot of to-dos everywhere. So if we if you look at the to-dos, there's a lot about documentation, a lot about how I'm not very happy where this is. But the thing is, sometimes you kind of just have to keep moving on, especially if you have a deadline. It's like, well, I'm not happy with this, but I've got to do it. Otherwise, I will get stuck. So yeah, I think that's a bit enough for the technical deep dive. Let's hide this, let's hide that, and let's bring this up. So yeah, I think that pretty much covers the whole post-mortem. Yeah. Thank you and goodbye.